Hello and welcome to the Bad Dice podcast. This is the Seraphon Army Book Review special, and this is going to be the first in a series of special editions of Bad Dice, which is just going to coincide with Army Book releases. As they come out, we're going to take advantage of our position as playtesters and have an awesome group of friends who are also playtesters to invite on the show, and hopefully we can get some guys in, chat about the books that are coming up and why we're excited about it, do book reviews as they come out, put the information out there as it hits as to what's in the books, what's going to be cool about them, why we're excited about them, and also some of the experiences we've already got of playing these lists and why we think they're cool and what we think we're going to see going forward with the book. So this first episode is the Seraphon review. We've got Paul Buckler and Jack Armstrong on the show. The main thing I need to know, though, is if you guys out there are wanting to hear this. I think it could be a really great format. We're in a really unique position here, and I just want to share as much information what we can about what we've done so far to this point. Want to put it out there in the community, and hopefully people are interested in it. If you are, let myself know, let Jack and Paul know, and get that info fed back to us. And any future book releases, I'll get a new group on. Hopefully people who've got experience with the book already before it even comes out, and you're going to hear firsthand some ideas on lists, new army lists that have already been played and had experience with, and we're going to get a chance to talk about on the show. So this is going to be a great episode. Seraphon, I'm super excited about. It's going to be a fantastic book. I think people have been waiting for this one for a long time. Jack and Paul have played a ton with it already. They are long-time Seraphon players and Lizardmen players back in the day as well, which is also great because they know the army, they know what it feels like to play, they know the what goes into making a good list that fits not only the rules on the table, but also the feel of a Seraphon army, the feel of a Lizardman army from back in the day. So here we go, on with the episode, and hope you all enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Bad Dice podcast. It's nice to be back behind the microphones, and we are back because we have a new army book to talk about, and I've got a couple of guests on the show as well. So it's been a while since I've been behind the mics, and since then I've been lucky enough to be one of the playtesting team. So I've got two of my fellow playtesters on the mics today, Mr. Jack Armstrong and Paul Buckler. Welcome to the show, guys.
Good evening.
Evening, boys.
So, how are we feeling? Seraphon, it's what we're here for. We're going to have a chat about it. Excited?
Oh, as anyone who knows me as a very long-time Lizardman player, I'm extremely excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this book a lot. I was playing them a lot last year, so something new and fresh will be good.
I can imagine.
Your beautifully converted army will finally be more usable.
Yeah, I think so. I've got a lot more options.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I think a lot of people have been excited for this one. Was it the first Battletome?
It was the first, and so it almost suffered by that fact.
Yeah, a long time in the coming. So what I want to do before we get into things is just talk a bit about why Bad Dice is coming back, I guess, and why particularly we've got Jack and Paul on the show to join me and chat about this new book. So first off, Bad Dice basically stopped because kids, I guess. Jack knows all about that. Life changes as you get older, and I'm gaming a lot more now, and I thought it was a good opportunity to take advantage of my position, I guess. I've got a really good group of friends who are all in a really good, close-knit playtesting group, and none of us really, Facehammer guys do, I guess, but not all of them are all playtesters, and I just thought it was an opportunity to have a chat with some mates about new books that are coming out, and I thought it'd be a really good outlet to, put some information out there, have a chat. It might be interesting for people to just, hear our excitement about new books as they come out, and it might not be Paul and Jack on every show. It will mix it up a bit. I think Jack's quite keen. He's
it depends how well we do, Paul. Depends how well we do. We'll see our FedEx invites in the post.
Yeah, that's it. Sure, but if I think the more people we can get in, the better. I think it's a really good opportunity to give people an insight into what goes on, give an insight into our ideas about books and things like that. I'm hoping it'll be really cool, and we'll see how this first one goes. So the reason we've got Jack and Paul on, we'll start with Paul. I think anyone who's seen some of Paul's armies in the past, particularly Seraphon army, will know he's pretty Seraphon mad. So tell us a bit about yourself, Paul. Why are you on the show, and a bit about your Seraphon.
So I last year set myself a quest to win the South Coast GT Coolest prize, one of those ones that is a bit mythical. Mr. Steve Foote has had it under his fingers for quite a few years, and I needed an army that I thought would kind of fit that. And I got a lot of Seraphon. I had them back in 8th edition. I played them loads in 8th edition and 7th edition and back in the day. So I thought, I'll crack these boys out. And conversions came, and display boards came, and mountains of skinks for summoning came, and I just love playing them. just love playing them. I did it for a purely an aesthetic reason to win this thing, to win the coolest. But after playing 2 or 3 games in AOS, love them, absolutely love them. I would say they're within my top 3 armies in AOS, maybe even the best. Even
and
my
you've
favourite.
got all of them.
I've got all of them.
Yeah.
I've got all of them on the shelf, yeah, or in all different guises of weird and wacky conversions, as well as the stock GW models, which are lovely in themselves, to be honest with you. I mean, they're some of the nicest kits out there, and they're not that new either, but they're still brilliant kits.
Surprisingly old as well, a lot of the models.
Yeah, like the Stegodon kit, that's really old.
It doesn't even come with instructions, I found out recently. Which I was really surprised. Oh, sorry, when I say instructions, it doesn't come with numbered bits on the kit.
Yeah,
so you go to assemble it, and you go, which piece should this be? And it doesn't tell you, and you take that for granted now.
Yeah. It's a really old kit, but it's still lovely. Absolutely lovely kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Seraphon, you won the Masters with?
Yeah, I won the AOS Masters with the slightly infamously, when basically you could argue that Saurus was slightly undercosted. And so I thought when I had 80 Saurus, I had enough, and then I had to go and buy and paint another 40 for the Masters. And I took basically 120 Saurus, which Russ loves and still remembers fondly, I think, judging by some of his podcast episodes. Basically that with Croak, it was quite an epically good army. And unfortunately now it means I think I've actually got 140 Saurus painted on the shelf to go with my 200 odd skinks. So yes, I did feel very prepared for a new book. And then, unfortunately, as always, I'm now still buying and looking to buy more models, because you never quite have all the different options that you might want, despite the huge variety of Seraphon that I have painted.
Yeah, so since the early days of AOS and the Masters win, have you played the list much at all in that time, since between then and now?
The list that Paul's run, I've tried a few times. You know, the kind of what was it? The Thunderquake, yeah.
Yeah,
I've had a couple of kind of friendly games with that, and I quite liked it. It doesn't cut it at top tier competitive.
No, it wasn't ever going to get you 5-0. If 4-1, you could do, but you struggle for that 5th win.
And as everyone knows, I'm such a fluffy, friendly gamer. You know, I'm all about the hobby. So yeah, I didn't take it.
You say that, however, I think I'm speaking to the 2 guys in the UK Age of Sigmar scene with the most models between them.
Yeah, and painted me well.
Yeah, we've got a few.
As long as it's order, I've got it all.
You've got all of order. Nice. Okay, so talk to me then about we had this conversation 2 years ago, and before you've even heard of anything new for Seraphon, what would you...
Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's it, Bitcoin, yeah, definitely. What would you say you'd like to have seen in a new Seraphon book? What would have got you excited for any changes? Assuming that, no new models, what would be the thing that you'd have wanted?
More choice would have been my first request. So more options out of that book. I want to be able to pick pretty much anything out of there and it to go into a list, and I can still feel that I'm competing on the table. Yeah, there were a few units before that just weren't cutting it, were there?
I think it's not only that. The list was very tricksy. So you either had, on the whole, the kind of the Pterodon trick, you had the Ripidactyl Shadow Strike trick, you had lots of kind of skinks to block you off with magic trick, the one drop for a while with the engine summoning trick. So it never really had an army that could just go and fight you or just go and compete reasonably normally. And so I actually was really hoping for just some solid units to actually just play the game, go and have a fight with someone and actually be able to hold their own.
Okay, no, they're both good points. And then, so since then, you've actually got the book, you've played some games, a lot of games, wrote some lists, got some models together. And how are you finding that now? Has that been satisfied? Was that an aim through the whole project of, that sort of bringing together more of the units? And do you think we've got there?
Oh, well, judging by my spreadsheet, which I write lists for kind of playtesting, yes. And it's in that really annoying stage where you can't quite spend the last few points, or you then jiggle something around. And just before we got on this call, I was chatting to Paul saying, I think I might be trying 2 of these units in the list now. And it's just, as always, I've kind of got the core of about 4 lists, and now it's playing around with the extra points. But I think, as we refer to kind of temples, I can't even remember what they're quite called in this, but, the kind of the choices you take, I think all 4 of them, spoiler, there are 4, have army lists to them, and I've written lists for all 4 of them, and again, I'm kind of toying with them, and I think there's the obvious one, which lots of people will jump on when it first comes, and then there's other ones you then go, actually, that's also, if I write this list, it's better, and then if I write this list and put this unit in, I want to move to this one, so it's quite nicely synergistic, but it's got lots of different ways to have those synergies, which encourages choice and more model buying. So good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, you look through the War Scrolls, you look at this and you go, I want this in my list, I want this in my list, I want this in my list. You can't have it all. You get to that stage where, what do I drop to get this?
And there's lots of buff pieces as well. You kind of, if you write a Saurus list, and you put a Sunblood and Old Blood on the other one in, and then you try and put the Star Priest and the Priest in, and then you kind of go, oh, damn, I've spent about 800 points on characters, and I've got no units to buff.
So are you guys trying to build lists around combos that you like the look of? Are you thinking, that'd be a really nice combination of units, try and fill that out to a list, or are you doing it a different way?
I think I'm building like mini lists within lists, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you've got like a 700-800 point little combination or synergy that works, and then you've got to work out, can you fit another synergy in there, or are you just then filling out with troops to go on the battlefield? Who's going to be your general? That's quite important. There's a lot of choices in the book.
Okay. Yeah, I also think that building around some of the battalions is really quite a good idea. So you've either got, there's a Thunderquake one, which is around big things, and then you've got one around cavalry, one around infantry, and then also some of the temples or choices, kind of push you towards skink. So you've almost got a few different kind of core concepts that you then build the rest of the list around, which I think works really nicely.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that a lot. So while we're still on kind of like initial thoughts on the book and list overall, there's obviously some huge changes to the book as a whole. You've already talked about my favourite way of referring to them, by the way, Jack, especially when it's things like temples is a good one, but I like to call them skyports, especially when it's like demons skyports and stuff like that. I think that's the most jarring. But
we need a generic term, don't we? We desperately
storm
need
host,
Storm host,
storm host. I like, but yeah, there is kind of so there's 4 new ones of them. There's also 2 ways of building the list. So
and that's really unique, I think. Actually, it's the only book I know so far which has 2 kind of ways that then take you into 2 each.
Yeah, it's almost 2 books in one, really.
Yeah, it is. So, are you trying to write lists for both, or are you just concentrating on one to suit your play style? How are you approaching that, Jack?
No, it really is both. And so normally it's kind of different lists fit different ones better, because it's how you want to play the army. So we talk about them, otherwise we're almost talking vagaries.
Yeah, let's go for it then. So talk to me about the Coalesced versus Star-born and how that works in the new Seraphon book.
So kind of put briefly, the Star-born is almost how it plays at the moment. So it's more about having a slan, I would say. It's more about casting. It's more about movement. You get a free teleport each go. Everything's bravery 10 because they're kind of demon lizards. You get summoning. You kind of have all those things. And so it's more about moving units around the table. Some of the temples or skyports you have in there are about, you get to retreat some of your skinks, potentially. You get to summon some units onto the table, a bit like the old Dracothian's Tail ability. So it's more table domination and moving and shooting, less combat.
Yeah, it's all about the ball position a lot with that, I think, and then getting the things in the right position at the right time.
It's not a slug it out army.
No, you're not going to go toe to toe with your opponent.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the Coalesce come in, isn't it? You get extra abilities for your combat units. And so what do you get with a Coalesce army?
Oh, the main two, and one of these will make people be very excited, and it's not quite as exciting as it first sounds. So basically, the main one is the 1 point damage reduction. So basically, every unit in your army reduces damage taken by 1, which in some ways, when you first think about it, is absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. So you play some armies, and we did a lot of play testing around this, and you play some things, like you play ogres, and you go, oh my God, this is the best thing has ever been invented, because literally you half the damage output of the army. And then you play Daughters of Cain, or Mortek Guard, and they just go, we're just going to ignore your, or Zinch with mortal wounds, and we just ignore your army-wide ability. So it's a very hard ability to point and balance, just because it's so binary. It's either very good or completely useless. And what you generally find, though, is they have some things, like I've played against Sinesh with it, and some of the all the demonettes it does nothing against, but then when the big keepers come in, it's more effective against them. So you generally find it is useful. And the second ability they get, which they actually have a few more, but the second one I find really useful is the Jaws ability. So every unit in your army gets an extra attack with Jaws, which includes surprisingly
things like Carnosaurs as well, though, doesn't it?
It's Carnosaurs, it's Salamanders, it's Saurus, it's Croxagores.
Yeah,
it's almost everything in your army has a bite attack, and some of them are really good. Like the Croxagores ones on a 6 to hit is a mortal wound. The Carnosaurs and the Stegodons.
Carnosaur spoiler is damage 5 now.
Yeah. So Stegodons grinding Jaws, they get 2 attacks, 3s, rend 1 damage 2. So it's just 50% more output on the Jaws, and it's good. So do you think players will gravitate towards one or the other based on their own play style, or do you think they will swap between based on lists? How do you see that working?
Initially, people are going to see that reduce the damage by 1, and they're going to be like, this is really good. And I think a lot of people will be onto that. But after time, I'm not sure. I think it will probably end up with a 50-50 split.
Yeah. We found some very powerful lists because I know originally when we were playtesting, I immediately gravitated toward Coalesced. And then I spoke to you, Paul, and you were playing quite a lot of games with the Star-born, and we both came up with positive and negative results with each. And we suddenly went, oh, yeah, there's more to be seen with this. And when we talk about lists, Paul's got some very potentially strong with Star-born, and I've got some strong with Coalesced, and I've been playing around with each as well. Okay. It comes down to play style, I think, in the end. I had one list with 140 skinks in, and I just got slightly bored of moving them all around, whereas the idea of moving around 6 big monsters and some Croxagores was kind of a lot easier.
Yeah, it's interesting that, there's always been talk of a dino list in the Seraphon and, bringing all your big toys out. And we've already seen Warhammer community have talked about it this week, how you can play battle line Stegodons. So there's a chance for the monster mash, which then, as a coalesced army, becomes even better, doesn't it?
Yes. And it really, and also if you go into the Thunder Quake or whatever it's called, which is like the basically the monster temple, they get an extra 2 wounds each as well.
Yeah,
which is really lovely.
This is the thing. So the Coalesced and the Star-born also get their own temples, or
they get 2 each.
Kotal's Claw and the Thunder Lizards for the Coalesce, and the Star-born get Dracothian's Tail and Fangs of Sotek.
Yeah.
So they it's just called keywords. Constellation it is actually for the Star-born.
That makes sense for Slam.
And I'm just looking now for the Coalesce one. Constellations. They're all constellations. So which part of the stars are they from? Oh, yeah, okay. Does make sense. I still like Skyports, but okay. We'll go with that. So yeah, it gets me as a book that you could... So I'm notorious for getting a list and sticking to it and playing it to death. Even recently played my Cauldron Guard list for the last 4 tournaments. Back in the day, I'd play the same Dark Elf list tournament after tournament. So this seems like a book where you could dive into Seraphon and just play it forever. There's enough options in it. Coalesced and Star-born are very different. All the constellations are different enough to give you wildly different armies from the same book, and that's really interesting.
It's brilliant. There's a lot of different play styles and different armies all in here. You really could spend a lot of time mixing between them.
Okay, no, that's great. So, before we dive into some more of the details of the book, then, is there any other major changes in here that really grabbed you? Magic systems, summoning, different units.
The bound endless spells is probably the key one. Yeah.
Okay, so bound endless spells. Basically, you're paying a few more points for these, but you can only. I'll read the words. It's probably easier, isn't it? It works the same way as a normal endless spell. So. Let's have a look. We've got the Purple Sun here. So, summon a bound Purple Sun, casting value of 8. Only Seraphon wizards can attempt to cast this spell. And the main difference is only the person who casts the spell is able to move it. So, how do you see that? How do you see that impacting the list?
It's things like Geminids, I would say, would be the obvious choice. I mean, that's a spell that normally you cast it out, and you've got to be a bit careful because that can come back and bite you after you've cast it. But with the Seraphon, they don't care. They chuck it out and they're moving it themselves all the time, so it's never going to hit your own units.
So do you think because of this we're going to see a lot more endless spells in play, or do you not think they can compete in that part of the game?
No, they really can. And again, what's so good is it's just another viable list. You can build a teleporting two-ish Slan or a Slan and Croak with a load of skinks, which just teleports around the board and casts endless spells. So it's another option.
Okay. I like the idea of this. So I've been wanting to play an endless spell army for a while, and obviously Daughters of Cain don't do that well. My Legion of Asgore didn't do it that well either. Whereas an endless spell army where I don't get hit back by them, that sounds really appealing to me. I think that might be one of the routes I'd go down if I was going to do a Seraphon list. I'm just trying to flick through to the actual wording on the rules. Just if one player has a Seraphon army, they move all of their bound predatory endless spells before any other predatory endless spells are moved. Players then alternate as normal, remaining. So you not only do you get to move your own, you then go to alternating as normal and move every other one of your opponents.
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good. I think we should just quickly touch on the summoning, just to say it's been toned down from what it was before. You're not seeing
about on par. It's probably slightly worse. You can take multiple Slan to get it now. It's the only slight new one.
You can. I think you're not seeing the battery before the Slan who's just not casting any spells now. You're seeing a little bit of summoning and spell casting from the Slan as well, as opposed to the dude just sitting in the corner generating summoning points all the time.
So essentially, you get D3 for having a Slan or a Troglodon, I think is your general. You get D3 for having an Astrolith on the table, and you get D3 for each Slan who doesn't cast one spell. So, you can theoretically have 4 or 5 Slan in your army not casting a spell each turn, but to be honest, it really isn't worth it when you look at kind of what you get from it and how much you spend to get the Slan who don't cast and don't do anything.
So to get 10 skinks is 6 summoning points. Yeah. So how would you go about getting those 6? Could you get that turn one easy enough?
So I would think you'll have a Slan, an Astrolith bearer, and that will probably be most armies. You might have a second Slan, but say you've just got the Slan and the Astrolith bearer, you'll get 6 points a turn on average.
Okay.
3D3.
Yeah, 3D3. Okay. All right, and then I'm sure there's some traits in there that would buff that, and maybe...
No, not really.
No. It's just purely putting more Slan in. I'm not even sure you put the Astrolith bearer in every list now. I think you kind
it
of
helps.
You might just go 2 3. Yeah.
If you have a casting list, you put the Astrolith in, but if you're just having a normal list, you probably wouldn't.
I don't think you base a list around summoning like you could before.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, I like that. I like that. There's it's
summoning basically
rather than not control.
It helps a bit, but it doesn't do that much. I'd probably say is
it's a little Brucey bonus maybe. You'd say.
No, good. It's like it should be. Like most of these summoning lists are like that now, I guess. Or they're moving that way certainly.
I would equate it to kind of what Khorne get in terms of their blood tithe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably a good analogy.
Okay, so one other major change I'd like to cover before we do move on. One of the one of the most least seen models on the table, but also one of the coolest models in the game, I think, and it's the Troglodytes. So that's had some changes as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I still don't particularly like it, to be honest.
Is this because it's
usable?
It's a monster and a spellcaster, so it's kind of it's not a slan and it's not a carnosaur.
Yeah, exactly. So you're paying the points for the fact that it's a monster, but you want it if you're buying it as a caster, it's just it's that difficult place. It's not that it's a bad model or it has no use. It's just you're paying points for often ability you're not using. It's why, for example, sometimes the Goblin Shaman's so good because it's a 90-point shaman. And actually, all you want a shaman to do is cast a spell, whereas, an incanter from Stormcast costs more because it's got a 3-up save and a combat ability. But you don't really want a caster to have a 3-up save and a combat ability. You want them to cast a spell.
Yeah.
So it's just slightly unfortunate.
It's like the Vanguard Hunters, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
you're paying for their flexibility, but you don't always want it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I see that. But I'm hoping, maybe it's just see a bit more love. It's had a bit of a rules buff. It does some more cool stuff. So hopefully,
I think it's more usable than it was before by a lot.
Yeah, if you're taking a list without a slan that you want Monster Mash, it's actually a very good substitute slan. It's basically the rules are tweaked for it to be a slan substitute almost.
Okay, that's cool. And then any other highlights? Hunting packs.
One thing I would note is. Previously, you used to roll for like a constellation with your slan to pick that it does stuff.
Yep.
But now you can actually choose, and the 3 abilities you can choose from are really, really good.
They're very similar to the old ones.
Yeah.
Reasonably similar. But you get to choose now, which is much nicer.
Yeah, which is really good. So, for example, one of them is you can add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons by a hero. So if you're on a mount like a Carnosaur or a Stegodon, everything gets that +1 attack.
+2, isn't it?
+1.
Oh, mixing that up.
Yeah.
+1 to run and charge is the one I know, which is quite nice for your whole army.
And then +1 to cast or dispel or unbind, which is really good as well.
Yeah, you get a lot of choice then. A lot of it seems
choose.
like there's a lot of tailoring in this book now. I remember when the Sylvaneth Battletome first dropped, and it was like, wow, we've got command traits. And then as the books have come and each new release gets more cool stuff in it, I think Seraphon are kind of like Apex Predator
Catching
almost
up.
in that.
Yeah.
Of like, they've got that many options. They've got 2 different whole armies in here. They've got 4 different constellations. They've got a whole rake of different command traits, artifacts of power options, things like that. They've got all the bound spells, and there's a lot of tools in this book. I think it'll be interesting to see it out in the wilds.
It's also, I think, what's interesting is if you look at our job as playtesters and what we've tried to achieve with this book and all the others, but I particularly think we've hopefully nailed it with this one, is making 4 temples which are all equally as appealing, all have viable lists, and none of them, which all have good combos, all have good synergies, but nothing too overpoweredly stupid or stand out, which is obviously always our goal. But I really think I could be proved wrong in 2 weeks' time when someone finds the completely broken combo we've missed, and I really hope not. But it feels to me like there's every option is good-ish, and none of them are too stupid.
And I'd also say
that
in this book, the make it yourself kind of temple, the pick your generic ones are actually quite viable as well in terms of an option.
I don't know. Actually, maybe for a Star-born, I'd never go out.
I do for Star-born definitely.
Yeah, for Star-born, yeah.
I think you can do a lot of what you want. You can make some things, but if you look when we get to it, I'll explain what.
While we're on it, then let's dive into some of the details of the book. Then, we've talked about the Coalesced and the Star-born. So let's dig into these constellations and just see what's what with them. So we've got Dracothian's Tail and Fangs of Sotek. So these are the 2 Star-born constellations. So Dracothian's Tail.
That's the castery one. One.
Its main ability is appear on command. Instead of setting up a friendly unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and appear as a reserve unit. So it's basically deep striking out of the stars, isn't it? You can set up one reserve unit for each one that's already on the table. More than 9 away from enemy units, wholly within 18 of a slan. And
so don't lose your slan.
Yeah,
then you lose your army.
But if you've got double slan, obviously that helps a lot.
Yeah, of course. So the Slan General must have the trait listed below, and he knows one extra spell. In addition, you can reroll one casting, dispel, or unbinding roll for this general in each hero phase. So that's quite nice. So you can cast your endless spells in your own turn, unbind them, and all of that sort of thing. You get to reroll if you want.
Actually, Ben, you asked at the very beginning what we were almost waiting for and hoping for the most out of this book, and I think what I failed to mention is a Slan who felt like a Slan. I mean, in the fluff and lore, they're supposed to be these amazing godly spellcasters, and the old Slan had pretty much no bonuses and nothing. And this one's finally. I mean, if you read the base scroll, it's got a base +1. It doesn't sound that amazing, but the amount of stacks you can get, if you can quite easily get +3 in a reroll.
Well, with that constellation I mentioned just now and an Astrolith bearer, you're on +3 to cast with a reroll.
Yeah, and like you say, don't lose your Slan. He's also in this one. He comes with a God Beast Pendant. First time the bearer's slain. On a 1, 2, or 3, it's slain. On a 4 to 6, all wounds are healed, and any that currently remain to be allocated are negated. So, like you say, it is.
Do you feel lucky?
Yeah,
that is not a Jack artifact.
It is really not. I want something perfectly average.
Yeah. So the next one's Fangs of Sotek, also a coalesced constellation.
This is going to make Russ so unhappy.
This is the skink one. This is what I would call the skink one, yeah.
In the first battle round, you become Tempestai, is it?
Yeah.
+3 to move. Yeah, so +3 to move, Fangs of Sotek, skink units.
It's the command ability that's awesome in this.
And then the command ability, it's you pick one friendly unit with
skink
the keyword
unit.
skink unit.
And it's also important to note here, because I've misread this a few times, it says it's a skink unit. You can't use the keyword to say a Stegodon or Salamanders, because it does say a skink unit.
Yeah, it's quite clear on that. And it spells it out of a skink, Fangs of Sotek skink unit, or Fangs of Sotek chameleon skink unit. Whole of an 18 of the hero, they can shoot. Nice.
And then on a 4-up, they can retreat or make a move.
So we should just say that the skink scroll has changed, so you can't do your retreat move as per the skink scroll anymore. So that's why this is quite important.
Yeah, so it lets you get your skinks out of dodge, do some shooting, move away. What other buffs can you put on with that then to make that particularly tasty?
A lot.
Loaded question.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear the skink combo kind of buffs?
Yes,
or do you want to do it in a bit?
No, go for it.
So normally skinks have one shot each. I'm going to go blowpipes. We'll say blowpipes. Normally have one shot
they've got a 16-inch range. So if you want to teleport them outside of 9, you want the 16 inches.
5s and 4s, no rend 1.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
But you can make them +1 to hit. So 4s and 4s. And if they're over 15, you get 2 shots. So say you've got a big unit of 40 and you get charged, that's 80 shots on 4s and 4s. What's that, 20 saves on average?
Yeah.
But you can also make them on 6s to wound, take a mortal wound in addition. So you're probably going to take 7 to 8 mortal wounds on average, plus 20 saves when you charge them.
And you've probably done that in the shooting phase, then in the stand and shoot phase, then in the combat phase.
Yeah.
Don't charge the skinks.
Yeah.
So I think one of the recurring
buffs up.
And one of the recurring themes you find in this, and this is why we always said at the beginning about all the characters, is you can kind of make super units, but you don't get very many of them because you then have too many characters who want to do the buffs, and lots of the buffs take command points, and then also if you hit the unit that's not buffed, it doesn't really do much at all.
Yeah, so someone piles all the buffs on the skink unit, and you just say, well, I'm just going to go here and set on an objective or take this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that's why it's a nice player's army, because it feels like you're having control over the game.
Yeah, okay, I see that. So, and that list you're talking about, it sits in Fangs of Sotek, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the other things you get for them then is the command trait, which is on a 3+ you receive a command point, and the artifact is pick one melee weapon at the end of any phase, any wounds that were allocated and not negated on a 5+ is model slain.
It's basically like a mighty axe of corn. It basically, if someone's going to have a very good skink slaying Archeon story.
Do you remember when that was like the best thing?
The mighty axe of corn with Pano.
It was the reality splitting axe.
That's
the one.
Yeah.
Paul knows all the words.
So one thing I would point out there is the command trait only has to be taken by a Saurus. So if you make your general a Slan, for example, you wouldn't have to take that. You could take a Slanny normal trait. So
yeah,
that's quite
sure.
good.
That is. It does sit in nice. Okay, so then the next two constellations are both for the Coalesced. So these are very fitting with the imagery as well. So we've got a Saurus head on one and a Stegodon head on the other, whereas the others were kind of like a skink mask and a I don't know, a Ripidactor head or something. So we've got the Kotal's Claw, +1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Kotal's Claw Saurus if they're charged.
So I think the most important thing to say about Saurus is they've finally got a point of rend if you go hand weapons. So if you go spears, there's still no rend. If you go hand weapons, they're 1 point. So and also they're now 2 attacks if over 15 models, whereas I think before it used to be over 30. So suddenly, they still struggle because they're on a 32 mil base and they've only got a 1-inch reach if you go for the hand weapons. But the fact is, they can be on, I think it becomes 2s and 4s, memory serves, for the hand weapons if you charge with Ren 1. So it's not too bad. If you're coalesced, you get 2 bite attacks and 2 attacks on 4s and 4s from the bite. So it's not bad for a 90-point unit.
And then once again, if you add in the hero buffs, you can make that even better.
Yeah. So they're not great, but they're not bad. But they're your standard, your liberated style unit.
Okay, no, I like that. And then the command ability for this one, it calls out units again, like the previous one. So it's just Saurus or Saurus Hero, and it always counts as having charged for its Savagery Incarnate. So even if you're in a grind, you can pop a command point, count as charging, and get that +1 to hit. The command trait is Dominant Predator. I like the name of that. Roll a 4+ each time it's used to get a command point. Sorry, that's in hero phase, I guess. Oh no, sorry. Roll a dice each time the general is used to issue a command, and on a 4+ you receive 1 extra command. Okay, so kind of like the brooch, you're getting command points back.
Or like the new Arcanauts ability. Yeah, it's like the new Arcanaut Admiral's ability.
And then the last one is the artifact you get in with this one as well. If an unmodified hit roll for the attack is made of a 6, it does 2 mortal wounds in addition, which is nice. Yeah. And again, it seems like all 3 so far, 4th coming up, the artifacts are all useful without being overpowered, and they all kind of fit nicely in, which is nice to see. Sometimes you get things like, plus 1 to attack on your wizard. That's got to be the general or some. It's
You're saving that for the 4th one.
Oh right, okay. I'm getting there, Emma. I preempted myself. So the last one's the Thunder Lizards, which I guess by the sounds of it is just Stegodon constellation. Add 2 wounds to all the monsters, which is nice, very nice. The command ability is at the end of your shooting phase, pick one of your Basties or Engine of the Gods or a friendly hero on a Thunder Lizard or Thunder Lizard hero. Bastildons can shoot with its solar engine, or the Engine of Gods can make a roll on its chart, which is nice. So that's an extra. Well, depends how many command points you got, I guess.
Yeah.
So you can build a command point battery, I guess.
Oh no, you run out of command. There are so many things in this list that need command points. I've tried a few games of this, and every time I very, very rarely have points to spend on this.
So it's a super solid ability, but also very difficult to spam it and still do everything you want elsewhere.
Yeah, you'd struggle to spam it out.
Okay, cool. Command trait, add 1 to attack characteristics by that general's mount. And then
you can basically get, with the overall ability to get, 1 extra attack as well, you can basically make one of your characters pretty much a skink hero on Stegodon. Very, very, very fighty,
Which, could come from out the blue if someone's going, it's only a skink on a Stegodon, and then bam.
Yeah.
Then artifact power in that one is a shooting phase. Pick one enemy unit within 12. On a 1, it can't be used again, and nothing happens. On a 2 to 3, nothing happens. On a 4 or 5, it takes D3, and on a 6, it takes D6 mortal wounds. So it's just like a shooting attack. which it's not bad. It's terrible. But...
no. Yeah, I don't think it's great, but But then again, I also think this is almost one of the most obviously powerful of the lists. I think a lot of people gravitate to this because it's also quite cool. You've got lots of monsters tromping around. You get the extra attacks, the extra wounds, the extra attacks on your hero. All of the other abilities are very useful, and so it's nicely balanced. That actually the artifact, I think, is one of the least useful of the four.
Okay, so artifacts, command traits, and all that sort of thing. While we're on the topic, then I'm not going to read blow by blow down all the lists because generally everyone will have this book in a week, and no one needs to hear that. But is there any highlights from these command traits that make some particularly nice combos?
Do you want me to pick one out of each one?
Yeah,
like
you
the
can
Slan,
do.
the Skink, and the Saurus. So for the Slan, Arcane Might, which is the same as you get in Dracothian's Tale, reroll a casting, dispel, or unbind. So you can just do that as a generic Slan. I think that's really good.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So Saurus, what do you think, Jack or Paul?
I think Nimble for me. +1 to move and +1 to save. If you're on a Stegodon, +1 to your save. I think they're 3 up base, aren't they, Jack? So that makes you 2 up? 4 up, so 3 up. Makes you 3 up.
Nice, very nice. I like that.
And then Saurus. Saurus is the one that's kind of, they're all okay. I don't know which one of those I'd pick. I think they're all pretty sort of even. None of them stand out.
Yeah, reroll hits a 1, reroll save a 1, or on a 4+, you receive an extra command point.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think you'd take a general to try and get one of these. I think the other ones are all better.
Yeah.
And then the same with the artifacts of power. Is there anything really tasty in here?
I like the Cloak of Feathers, whatever it's called, which is basically on a skink. It's -1 to be hit and +4 moves. It's basically a bit of a better Griff Feather Charm, which is lovely again on a skink.
The other one I would say is that Stegodon Hell for another +1 to save. So all of a sudden you do get your Steg on a 2-up save.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the command trait.
It's very nostalgic as well. We've got Light of Dracothian, Itsy Grubs, Plaque of Dominion.
I remember all of these.
Blade of Realities. all of the classics are in here. So someone's been digging through the old army books from back in the day. Itsy Grubs, for example, at the start of each hero phase, heal 1 wound. In addition,
so can you remember what it used to do, Ben?
No, not at all.
+3 for a spell in 8th edition.
There you go. And this one does give you a casting buff. Reroll 1 casting or dispelling for the bearer. And in the enemy phase, reroll 1 unbinding roll. So they're very strong in the magic phase.
Yeah, if you build a list around it, and that's what I really like about the book. If you build a list, you can have a list that competes with any of the best casting lists out there. If you build your list around it, and that's what is so strong.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like when you think of a Seraphon army, obviously they are very driven by the heroes, but the book seems to capture that really well. It's in the background and the stories, it's always the skinks, pulling the strings, and the slans, doing the magic and telecommunicating over massive distances, and then the sorcerers are getting stuck in at the front. And the book seems to be very well structured around building lists like that.
Yeah, but also lots of the lists I've been writing have barely had any characters in at all. So I think again, it's kind of, you can build your list like that, and the army book and kind of synergies allow you to, but it doesn't drive you down that. You can go, actually, I just want to have some big monsters, and that's also good.
No, I like it. So let's move on then into more of like play styles and list building. So first thing I want to know is, let's say you've been like a casual Seraphon player, you've got an army, and you've got a bunch of stuff which was good fun and worked quite well in the old book. Can you play that in the new book, and will it work, or does this book now need drastic changes to fit and do well? So
you just mean a general army? You had just like a Slan, some Skinks?
Yeah, I don't know really. Just any of the kind of like good lists from the old book. Not necessarily like the really janky top tier list. Just like a good solid list from the old book. Does it port over quite well?
Yeah. You could play club games very happily with your 3 starter boxes of a couple of monsters, 20 to 40 Saurus, 10 cavalry, a Slan, and some other characters in the Carnosaur. That is a very viable army.
So you're not skewed down a particular route by, thinking, I've got to have loads of skinks with a skink hero and this and that and the other.
No, not for general play.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to min-max, I think my lists have generally gone more that way. But then again, I'm actually now starting to just put some, 10 Cold-Born Cavalry into one of my Stegadon lists, because they're actually just a really good, cost-effective utility piece to go out on a flank and take an objective and fight the other kind of light cavalry armies.
Unless you had one of those like really specialist lists that you were playing like all of the Ripidactyls or all of the Pterodons, I think if you just had a slan, a few characters, and a mix of stuff, it's as good there. It's better now than it was back then.
Yeah,
it does more stuff.
Okay, great. So different builds we've talked about already. It's like you can get a lot of different ones. Do you think it's going to be a challenge to flick between them? Know if you're playing a lot of the Star Host and then swapping over to the Coalesced style list, is it going to be wildly different to learn and play the army, or do you think there's enough similarities in there still?
I think it's almost like playing two different armies.
I've got one list which I can't quite decide whether it works better as Coalesced or Star-born. But apart from that, everything else I'm writing distinct armies and, as Paul says, units into one of the armies rather than the other.
Okay, so should we run down some examples? What do you want to start with that one then, Jack?
Yeah, so let me get it up. So it's a fire lance. So basically, all of the formations, you have either a Coalesced version or a Star-born version. And so Fire Lance is the one which has got 3 units of Saurus Cav and a Scarvet in, and they both have different abilities. So in the Coalesced version, they get +3 move and charge if they're within a certain range of the Scarvet. And in the Star-born version, they get mortal wounds on 6s, which is like their old ability. So you've kind of got 2 options. So if you put them in Coalesced, they're more resilient, they get an extra bite attack, and 2 different things on their profile have a bite. So basically, the Cold ones go up to 7 attacks a model, and they're 100 points. So they become quite fast. They become, very choppy. You put a Star Priest in there, which gives them the 6s to wound as a mortal wound. You put a Star Seer in there, which gives them, and basically, if he's wholly within 12 inches of them at the start of the charge phase, they can roll 3d6 and declare a charge up to 18 inches away. So basically, you can get a very long charge. You put an Old Blood in there, which gives them +1 to hit as ability. And then you put a Scarvet in there, which for a command point can give them exploding 6s to hit. So essentially, my list has all of those characters and then 40 cavalry and probably 2 15s and a 10. Along with a unit of Salamanders and some Skinks. So it's really designed around, you have 15 cavalry on the front line, you buff them up with all of those buffs and you send them in, and then the following turn you do the same with the next unit. So, I mean, what is it? 15 of them with 7 attacks each, 105 attacks, and they're mostly hitting on 2s. This is something you probably put in Kotal's Claw, so probably hitting on 2s and then wounding on 3s or 4s. So it's got a lot of damage potential. Or you put it in Star-born, and the Star-born one explodes on 6s. Sorry, has mortal wounds on 6s naturally. So suddenly it's 2 mortal wounds on 6s, and you teleport the units in, and then you use the Star Seer's ability to charge from 3d6 away. So you'll teleport from 9, you go +1 charge from the constellation, so you're charging on an 8 in 3d6. So again, it's a way of delivering those cavalry, whereas in the Coalesced, they're hardest to deliver, but they get +3 attacks per model. And -1 damage. So I'm not sure which one's better, but the army is nigh on identical between them. So yeah,
I like that. It's interesting to say these the battalions as well. So it's Fire Lance, Temple Host, and then Fire Lance, Star Host, and the different points as well. So obviously, because they've got different abilities, and even though it takes the same amount of units, the abilities matter on the points side. So they can come in at different points. So even when you say you're switching between the 2, it might mean because you've changed from one temple host to a Star Host, you might end up with 20 points somewhere, which frees up a whole new unit to go in.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, so what about you then, Paul? Have you got any lists?
Okay, so I'm going to go with Star-born as that's my preference of the 2, if I'm honest, because I quite like the teleporting and the tricks and stuff. So this is what I would call my generic starting list that I'm going to start running. So it's not got a formation. It starts with a slan in Dracothian's Tail, so it's going to be a casty kind of list. It's 2 Skink Priests and a Star Priest. It's got an Astrolith Bearer. It's got an Old Blood on Carnosaur. It's got 40 Skinks, 10 Skinks, 10 Skinks, a unit of 3 Salamanders, another unit of 3 Salamanders, 5 chameleon skinks, 5 chameleon skinks, and the bound geminids endless spell. So it's roughly going to generate a unit of 10 skinks a go. So that's kind of what your summoning does. And then it's all built about buffing the skink units or the salamander units with the priests and the star priests. So that unit of 40 skinks is like my first wave I'm going to send out at you. And it's going to do the 80 shots, probably...
Charge in and try and do 80 attacks.
If it can get there. Depends which constellation I take. So I might take the +1 to charge. I might take the +1 to cast. I'm not sure, depending on which one I want to do. And then after it's done that first wave, the next turn, I'm going to be sending the salamanders at you. And salamanders now are pretty tasty.
The scroll works a lot better. They've changed quite a bit. It might be worth covering how both them and Razordons work.
Yeah, so I've got that in front of me now. So you get the stream of 5 attack. It's 4 attacks.
Well, it's almost how you buy the unit. It's actually written. It's not clunky. It's very simple how it works. It just almost basically so you buy one salamander.
You get 4 dudes, don't you? Yeah, you get 4 dudes
for 80 points.
Okay, and you can still take them in units, can't you?
Yeah, so you take units to 3 max, and I'd always take 3 , I think, most of the time.
Yeah, because you can lose the skinks before you lose the salamanders.
When you
although you have to be careful with the bravery.
Yeah, but you have to have the bravery, so it's not
6
so much of a problem.
Coalesced.
Yeah, so the shooting attack, you're probably going to buff this with a skink priest to give him +1 to hit. So you're going to be hitting on 2s instead of 3s.
Yep, and then 3s to wound.
4 attacks to model.
And 6s to wound will be a mortal wound in addition as well, because you're probably going to do that buff.
And you rend 2 damage D3.
D3, but if you roll a 6 to wound, you're going to be... is it 6 to hit or 6 to wound?
6 to hit.
6 to hit, you bypass the wounds completely and you just do D3 mortals off the bat.
Okay, so...
So a unit of 3 of those is 12 shots. You probably roll 2 6s, so that's 2 D3 mortals.
Plus 2 in addition.
Yeah, you get 8 hits, so it's probably going to work out 5 or 6 through at -2. So what do you do? Probably 6 D3 damage in total, maybe. Not bad, is it?
12-inch range, though. So,
yeah, but you can teleport and do them in Star-born. That's the trick.
And if you make them coalesce, then they can't teleport, but their bite attacks get an extra thing in combat.
Yeah.
Which means they're actually really quite strong in combat
so
as well.
Pretty much the same profile in combat then. It'd be 4 attacks, 3s and 3s,
so,
rend 2 damage D3 in combat.
Interestingly, the one thing that the army as a whole struggles with is rend. So the only thing I think in the army with rend 2 is salamanders. So everything else is rend 1, so even the big stegodons and Croxagore, Stegs, etc. They're all
rend 1. Razordon's tail in combat is rend 2.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunately it's called a tail, not a bite. So it's only one.
Yeah, sure.
You don't get bonus attack. So actually, salamanders are almost quite important because they give you mortal wounds and rend 2. So if you're facing something like Mortek Guard or something else with a good save, you need something that can punch through because Stegs do a lot of damage, but only at rend 1 you can just be armor saved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas putting these salamanders on the board with all that rend and mortal wounds.
Yeah.
No, it really helps fix the problem. I think you're going to see 3 salamanders in almost every list.
Every list, yeah. And I've got two lots of those in mine for redundancy.
Is there a potential for 20? Do you think it'll be?
I don't. I mean, I've tried 2 units. The problem is that they have got quite short range. So they're move 8, range 12.
And they die quite fast.
They die so fast because you just, you lose all the skinks very quickly. Then they're subject to battle shock, especially in Coalesced. Which, so they're very useful. I think 2 units is probably about the max because you need them behind something, but they're only 12-inch range.
Yeah, sure.
So as soon as you shoot with them, they die back, generally speaking.
And how do the handlers work? Are they just counters or are they
just
actually models on the board?
No. Well, they're count as models. So in terms of objectives and stuff, you've got... If you buy 3 of them, you've got a 12-man unit to grab an objective, which is pretty cool.
And screen with, effectively.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's I like them. They've always been a good unit, the Salamanders have, and I think they've in the last book, they kind of lost the way a little bit.
They became single-point redirectors almost.
Over. No,
but the units now, I think, are pretty decent.
Yeah, good. So you've got them. You've got chameleon skinks as well.
Chameleon skinks, they get their thing. So they can
not as abusive. It's outside of 9 now, like everything else.
Yeah, sure.
They're just good, and the shooting's actually quite good. There's another mortal wound output again from them. So
mortal wounds on 6. And they're only 90 points now, so they've come down because their rule isn't quite so abusive.
I think I could see me playing these. The more I read through them, and the more I like think about lists, and
there's so many good different options. I mean, we haven't quite talked about overall power level. I mean, I really don't think this is going to be. I really think and hope these aren't going to be dominating any tournaments, but I do think they're going to be a lot of fun to play with and hopefully against.
I get the impression, someone like yourself, Jack, if you went all in on this book, I think you could dominate with it. But I don't think it's
I think this is a 4 out of 5 with a good player army, which kind of. And don't get me wrong, as always, if you get a good run, much like we saw Khorne podium recently, and I really will try and take this to some tournament soon. But I just think it's a really cool book, and I really want to play with it.
I think the thing is, if you're drawn against someone, they say they're playing Seraphon, you're not going to know what they're going to bring to the table until they turn up and get their models out.
Yeah, of course.
That will be the thing.
Okay, so what about just another couple of lists from you guys? Anything else you've been playing? And then what?
Shall I go through the list? This is probably what Jack and I were thinking would be like a top Seraphon list, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Like if you're trying to do well, and it's quite similar to what I had before, but you drop a few of what I would call the luxuries, the nice things that might not be quite cutting it, and you end up doubling up on some of the really good stuff.
Go for it. Lay it on.
So we're going for Fangs of Sotek this time.
Yep.
So your skinks are going to be able to shoot when they get charged. It's the Slann as your general. 2 skink priests, 2 star priests. So you've got redundancy in all your buffs. 40 skinks, 40 skinks, 40 skinks. 3 salamanders. 5 chameleon skinks, 5 chameleon skinks, 5 chameleon skinks. Geminids, bound geminids and bound swords. Quicksilver swords. And that rocks in at 1980 points. So it's just under, so you might get a cheeky triumph as well.
So there's a lot of bodies. 3 times 40 skinks.
120 bodies.
Yeah. 3 units of 5 chameleons as well for the moving around
for getting
objectives,
in the way.
shooting stuff.
And then 3 sallies as well.
No, I do like the sound of that. Do you think a list like that might struggle with something that can just get hold of it quickly and give it a bash in?
Yeah, that's where it's going to fall down. Yeah. Probably.
It's probably a better teams list.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I've played it, and the problem is, as always, anyone who tries to roll 6s or used to use skinks when 6s on to hit with poison, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold. So you've got 80 shots, 6s are to wound, but because it's the wound roll and you hit on 4s, suddenly you're down to 40. It's just it can do really well.
It's a bit dicey, isn't it? I would say.
It really is, and then whatever you're throwing out there then dies. So. You have a few kind of reasonably nervous times, and also it's not a grindy list at all.
No. So, but it's got good board presence. You've got a lot of bodies, and you can.
It's just not low drop, I guess, is the issue with the board presence list.
It's not, but because you've got the teleport, it's not quite as bad for that. 40 skinks can probably protect the rest of the army because you can put some off the board.
Yeah,
bring it on later. So that gives you that option. So that's more about numbers on the board and mortal wound output more than anything.
Okay, and then finally, what about talk to me about
Thunderquake?
Yeah, I was going to say, talk to me about the Monster Mash. What's how's it looking? What's in there?
I've been writing quite a few lists of this because I just don't get me wrong. It's probably one of the stronger lists. I think maybe that skink list might be stronger from a pure top table competitive, but this just looks a lot more fun. A lot less models. I did play a game recently, and it was 140 skinks on the table, and it was almost just hard work to use. So, I mean, I've been playing around and trying to make the points work on my Thunder Lizards list. So basically, it's built around a core of 2 stegs, and it's worth saying as well, Stegadon's a battle line if they're in Thunder Lizards. So it's 2 stegs and an ancient steg with a skink in Thunderquake, with the Thunderquake formation, and then a unit of Salamanders in the formation. Essentially, the formation allows you to either shoot or run and charge, or have +1 attacks to everything on your stat line in combat. So that's very, very good because the stegs basically have 3 different profiles. Salamanders have 1, so it just really is a very good compound effect. And then at the moment, in addition to that, I've got a Basiladon, 1 unit of skinks, 1 engine of the gods. The engine of the gods is quite good because it can heal all the other things. And then 2 units of cavalry, purely just, again, something to go up on the flanks, hold an objective, screen a bit, just do those kind of things. And then 1 star priest although I'm still not entirely sure on those kind of last few points. It's quite nice to get a priest in there. But actually, because we haven't talked about the new scenery piece, there's the new, what was it, pyramid coming.
Realm Shaper engine.
Realm Shaper, and that's it. And so you want one wizard or priest in there just to be able to manipulate that. So I don't actually think my list wants him particularly, but it's almost not worth not having one because you give up the fact that you can use the ability on that to do mortal wounds.
Okay. What's interesting about what you guys have both said all the way through all these lists is you all think the Thunder list is good, the Skink list is probably better, but you've not really talked too much about mixing the streams a bit. So do you not think like half of the army being monsters, chucking in 80 skinks and maybe, is that...
I guess if you want to go monsters, you want to go Thunder Lizards because they all get +2 wounds, and then you want to go Coalesced, they all get the extra bite attack. So it kind of streams you down there. And so if you're doing that, you kind of think, well, do I put something else in or do I put a monster in which gets +2 wounds and an extra attack? So it's almost encouraging you to go more in on a theme.
Yeah, sure, I see that.
And if you're going skinks, you go, well, if I'm going skinks, I really want them to be able to run away and shoot, as otherwise they get caught and die. So why don't I put them in fangs? So it does definitely encourage you. It's almost basically saying if you're a Star-born Seraphon, you base you're a skink, and if you're living underground, you're probably a lizard.
Yeah, and I think Saurus warriors do fit into both in different ways, I think.
Yeah, I guess we haven't really talked about them. I mean, there's 2 formations. So the what's it called? The Sunclaw Star Host. So in Temple, it gives the an extra point of rend,
which is really good.
Which is because they get rend 1, so suddenly puts them to rend 2, which is lovely. And that's only on the swords, not the spears, unfortunately. The spears have no rend base, but it puts their spears to rend 1. But in Coalesced, it gives their bite to rend 1, so they'll get 2 bite attacks because they're Coalesced on 5s and 4s. If you charge in Kotal's Claw, it's +1. The Saurus Hero's command ability is +1 to hit. So suddenly, and then the Scarvet is
6s explode, yeah.
So suddenly you're on just a bite. Actually, I suppose the model is 4 attacks on 2s and 4s and 3s and 4s.
You can give them +1 to wound as well.
Rend
one
1
of the command abilities, the Sunblood.
The Sunblood. Yeah. You've got to be within 12 inches of the enemy though, which is quite. I mean, I think lots of these buffs are very good, but they're also they all need command points, which you really run out of. And then the other one, which I suppose you haven't talked about too much, is the Star Priest. Is basically Tekia, whatever name is. Tetoreka. Thank you. So his ability is brilliant but limited. So it's any unit wholly within 12 inches at the start of the charge phase gets to roll 3d6 to charge and can charge within 18. So it's really, really strong. But he also has to be within 12 inches of where they're charging from, which puts him in harm's way. And he's like a 4-wound, 140-point wizard who does not want to be in harm's way. So it's kind of balanced by the fact that he has to be not where he wants to be to use it. And so the few times I've used him, it's kind of like, oh, I don't really want to be running him up to be within range of the unit I want to charge with. But that's kind of why I bought him in the army. So I'm still not entirely sure whether he's got a place, but he's very, very useful. And he also gets you a command point and a 4-up each turn, which is also really helpful.
Okay, no, there's a lot to be really happy about in this book, I think.
Oh, definitely.
I think overall, I think initially
you're not going to have any unhappy Seraphon players.
Yeah, I think the Seraphon players are going to be mostly unhappy because, people don't like new stuff. Everyone else who's not a Seraphon player is probably going to be really excited to be a Seraphon player. But no, it's in all seriousness, I think there is a lot to be happy about. I think there's a lot of really neat combos, a lot of just head scratching and list writing.
There's a lot of lists. A lot of lists people are going to be writing for these boys. So, I think the Seraphon WhatsApp group's going to be going.
It already is.
For the next. Oh, it already is.
Spoiler alert: there's been 3,000 posts since like 4 p.m. As we're recording on Friday night. No, they'll be pretty happy, I think, and hopefully, as people listen to this over the weekend and the next week, if anyone's got any questions, they can send them in. But it'd be interesting to see what people think to the list you guys are writing and.
It'll also be, in 3 months' time, whether we're proved to be utterly wrong or...
Yeah, maybe so.
Someone's got that list that we completely missed.
Yeah, hopefully, because it shows the creativity of the community, and it is good. So, one final thing I want to look at is, So I don't play Seraphon, but I'm going to have to account for them more now than I did previously.
You mean when you run your identical daughter list, you run for the last 6 months?
Oh, shush now. So, yeah, basically. So is there anything in your guys' current lists that you're going to have to start taking into account with the Seraphon book in your current list or other people's current list? Will anything change for other armies, and how are they going to adapt to... I suppose it's difficult because the Seraphon seems so flexible. Is there anything you're going to have to tool up to make sure you just don't get stomped by not taking it into account?
I don't think anything in this book stomps you.
I don't think anything's going to change the meta. I think it's more it's a solid army that fits quite nicely into the meta rather than changing or shaping it. My gut feel.
It's a book that you can use in any of the scenarios in the General's Handbook and have the tools to compete in those scenarios. None of them you go, I don't know how I deal with that. You can play any of them from the hero missions through to the multiple objective missions. All of those, it's got tools to work in.
I guess the only thing it could do is it could make you think, is it worth taking this, I don't know, this unit with this weapon that's extra rend 1 damage, or this unit that's 2 damage but no rend. Actually, evocators with grand staves is probably the best example, although they're not the most popular unit. You go, do I want 4 attacks at rend 1 damage 1, or is it 2 attacks or 3 attacks no rend damage 2? So suddenly, if Seraphon become popular on the scene with Coalesced, you definitely don't want the damage 2 because you ignore it.
I guess War Chanters as well for your Big Wire and your Angels. They don't really do anything against Coalesced.
Yeah, so again, it always depends how popular it gets, and if you start going, well, it's not worth putting this in because it becomes useless if I'm facing Seraphon every other game.
Yeah, I also suppose lots of big monsters on the table, and you might automatically think, well, I need a lot of damage output to bring them down, where what you might actually need is just bodies. But then you bring your bodies and you get outbodied by 120 skinks.
You don't know what you're going to face when you face Seraphon.
But also, the game isn't like 40k where you need different weapons for different units. So what kills 40 skinks kills a Stegodon. It's all about the armor save. And I guess the only thing to mention we haven't really talked about is they've lost their special shields. If people remember these, the cavalry and the Saurus used to have an ignore rend shield, and now they basically just all have a 1 pip of armor save. So it's a buff essentially because now if you face rend 1, you're identical. If you face no rend, you're better off. So it's a positive for all of them.
One thing I might say is actually if you're relying on a lot of spells, and there's going to be a lot of slan kicking around, you can stop a lot of spells. It might be something that you see a bit less in people's lists now.
Yeah, they've got a table-wide dispel.
Yeah, at +2 potentially. So they could be quite good at neutering magic-heavy armies, or at least stopping the key spells that might be the linchpin of your build.
Do you think people are going to have to start thinking a little bit more about endless spells? Because it's not just a case of you can mitigate it with priority rolls a little. You kind of going to have to look more a bit about zoning them out with bodies.
Yeah, and dispelling them as well, rather than casting your own spells. You might end up people burning their cast, just dispelling the spells that Slan and the other wizards have got out there.
Yeah, there is a list in there which is, probably 2 Slan in one of the Star-born lists, maybe a make it yourself one, or the Dracodian's Tale.
Yeah.
Man, with a load of endless spells, just teleports around.
I'm going to write some lists with.
I think you do that list. You do Slan and Croak, because Croak's great if you teleport him out.
With a banner for the extra range on a Balewind.
Yeah, chameleons, salamanders, maybe a load of single salamanders. I think it was super cool.
It sounds like your old Dark Elves, Ben.
Yeah, just jumping about the board and spitting fire at people. Sounds good. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we could go all night with this. It's such a big book. I didn't want to do a blow-by-blow. I think we've dug into enough details to give people something to be excited about. I think we've covered off some really interesting lists that you guys have been playing. So hopefully people have enjoyed this. So what I would say is if you're listening, you've enjoyed the show, let us know, because it will have an impact on whether we do more of them. And I've enjoyed it. It's been nice getting back behind the mics. I hope you guys, Paul and Jack have as well.
That's right. Then you'll have to edit it and you'll be cursing the next 2 hours.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it's Friday night, people who don't know when we're recording. So it's Friday night before we are allowed to post this on the Saturday morning. So, I'm going to be up all night getting this together for your listening pleasure on Saturday morning of pre-order day.
We were so smooth. What could possibly need?
Yeah.
Timing's everything. So, no, it's all good. So thanks very much. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it, chaps. Where can people reach out to you guys if they got any questions, want to talk Seraphon with you?
I'm Jack W. Armstrong on Twitter.
I'm at Warhammer GC on Twitter.
And events coming up? Anything you're excited about or going to?
South Coast.
South
Same
Coast.
to me.
I really do think I'm going to end up taking Seraphon there. I don't think they are the most competitive army in the scene right now, and I've got lots of others that are more competitive, but I just really, really want to play Seraphon.
Yeah, same for me. I'm doing the coolest again this year. So me and Steve Foote and Matt Lyons are really pushing the boat out this year. So keep tuned to Twitter again, hashtag SCGT 2020 coolest to see what we've been up to. Ben Smith's done an amazing Arkanauts display board as well. So, yeah, if you're interested in cool armies, that should be where you're looking.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to South Coast. I think it's going to be a good one this year. Big numbers, 140?
Yeah, 140 at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a cracking event. I do get the feeling it will be Seraphon out in force at that one.
That'd be good.
Okay, so I think that about wraps things up. Before we shoot off, I just want to give a shout out to our own event that I'm running, Blood and Glory, which are you guys coming? First year in a while,
Jack? I am.
You can go this year.
You very kindly changed the dates.
Yes,
my wife's birthday.
Just for you.
Just for me.
So
it was very kind of you.
9th, 10th and 11th of October this year. We're moving from Derby to Nottingham, so we're 5 minutes walk from Warhammer World. So if anyone's used to travelling to Notts to see Warhammer World, you can stay in the same sort of hotels. It's all in the same area. But the Nottingham Tennis Centre, we're looking at about 600 people this year. We've got game systems including 40k, Age of Sigmar, the Hobbit strategy battle, Middle-earth strategy battle game, Underworlds. We've got all the specialist games. We've got an awesome Friday event from Games Workshop. So the Warhammer World events team are coming to Blood and Glory on the Friday, running 2 kind of mini gaming sessions where we're going to be playing most of the specialist games, Kill Team, Age of Sigmar, all in 1 hour rounds. There's going to be an afternoon and an evening session. Then over the weekend we've got the championships events as well. So 150 for Age of Sigmar, 150 for 40k, 100 for the Hobbit, 100 for Underworld. So we've got one of the few grand clashes in the country as well. So anyone's interested, tickets are going up on sale you can just check out us on Twitter or baddice.co.uk for information. Tickets on sale at the end of March. So, okay, guys, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to send your questions in or any chat about Seraphon, let us know, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. If this goes down well, we'll try and make it a regular for every new book release, I guess. And thanks for joining us, and see you again soon.
Cheers, Ben. Good night.
Good night, Ben.